Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, and here, by popular demand, is the Eliahu Inbal Berlioz edition, originally issued on Denon, but now back on Brilliant Classics. This is a very good Berlioz edition. I mean, there aren't many Berlioz editions. We don't really stop to think very much about just how rare it is to see a composer who's really dedicated to Berlioz. There was, of course, Colin Davis, and before that there was Charles Munch. And, if they were all collected together, we would have a pretty decent Berlioz edition from Seiji Ozawa as well, at least for a couple of the major works. But basically, Berlioz is a catch-as-catch-can composer, possibly because of the economics. I mean, he wrote mostly huge works that are very expensive to produce, and they're very diverse. And not only that, I mean, his style it's Berlioz. It's crazy. You have to have the right combination of sort of classical integrity when it comes to structure and design and a certain austerity, and then complete utter insanity of emotional expression or feeling for orchestral color. And, it requires an odd combination of traits. Colin Davis's Berlioz sort of emphasizes the structural aspects. He doesn't usually cut loose in a crazy kind of way, but he certainly doesn't inhibit anything, which is really what's important about the whole thing. And Charles Munch was, of course, a madman, and his frenetic, exciting, passionate, hot and heavy Berlioz was sort of the essence of Berlioz. Inbal is, not surprisingly, perhaps somewhere in the middle. He's not as careful in terms of architecture as Colin Davis tends to be. He's not as frenetic as Munch, but he's very, very good. He's very good because he's also a very good Mahler conductor. And, the two composers require some of the same qualities. That combination of structural grasp, but willingness to just let it all hang out when it needs to hang out. And this hangs when it needs to hang. And that's what really matters. So let's see what's in the box. It was splendidly recorded by Denon. And, when I talked about Inbal's Mahler cycle, some of you mentioned some of the other things that he'd done. He did do all the Ravel orchestral music, which was very good, but really not terribly necessary. And he did a Shostakovich cycle with the Vienna Symphony, which was really very, very mediocre, in my opinion, because the orchestra was wrong. It was just too soft-edged all the way through. I suspect that with a different band, and he would have done it differently. But anyway, so let's talk about his Berlioz. First, of course, you've got the Symphonie Fantastique. It's a very good Symphonie Fantastique, and it was very well recorded, I thought. A lot of these recordings, this is with Frankfurt Radio Symphony, and it was made in the Alter Oper in Frankfurt, which is like an aircraft hangar. It has this big blowsy acoustic. So not everything there sounded great, and these were somewhat early digital recordings, and not everyone liked Denon's sound, and there were talks, someone, posted a comment about, microphones and stuff and all that stuff. I don't really care about any of the backstory about what they did. All I care about is how it sounds like, and what they had to do to get there. Well, that's their problem. It's not mine. Mine is only, my only concern is with the result, the audible end product. So this is a really fine Symphonie Fantastique. And, one of the things about, these individual works is that they've been recorded many times, but most of the recordings are terrible. Berlioz is a hard composer to capture well. But this does the job, at least in the Symphonie Fantastique. You have a really tight first movement, a lovely ball, a slow movement that doesn't die, and a march and finale that are exciting, and The Witch's Sabbath is aptly witchy, and it has really nice bass. I remember very vividly and listened to this a little while ago, and it still has very nice bass. So then we have Harold in Italy with Yuri Bashmet. Again, a very good Harold in Italy. This is the work that sort of does the best in recordings. You need a decent viola soloist and a conductor who knows that the orgy of brigands should sound orgiastic. Inbal certainly knows that. The playing is very, very good, and it's almost a foolproof work. It's as close as Berlioz got, let's put it that way, to writing something that works no matter what you do to it. The Damnation of Faust is really good. This is one of the real highlights. The soloists are fine. You've got Maria Ewing as Marguerite and Denis Gulyas as Faust and Robert Lloyd as Mephistopheles and the Cologne Radio. It's just an exciting and vivid performance of a work that, usually doesn't get as exciting as it ought to, particularly at the final scene in Pandemonium, when all hell has to break loose. And it breaks loose pretty well here, I must say. It does. Again, I'm impressed. I'm impressed. Romeo and Juliet. Okay, another very good bunch of soloists. Nadine Denise, Vincent Cole, Robert Lloyd. Beautifully performed. I have a problem with Romeo and Juliet in the sense that I almost prefer the orchestral excerpts rather than the whole thing. I'm not sure it works, the whole thing. That's my thing. That's my problem. So every performance that I hear, I'm waiting for the one that's going to make it all work for me. And so far, the only one that's done that is Ozawa in Boston, which has a combination of playing and singing that to me is just unbeatable. It's just amazing. But this is good. It's as good as any, I suppose. And we have L'Enfance du Christ with Margarita Zimmermann and Elke Wilm Schulte and Stanford Dean and John Aller and Philip Kang. L'Enfance du Christ is just a beautiful, lovely pastoral piece that, again, it usually does what it's supposed to do if you buy the concept. It's a work that some people find boring beyond belief. I just think it's lovely. It's just a beautiful, beautiful piece. I enjoy listening to it. I don't care if it's Christmas time. I don't ever care if it's Christmas time. That's not my thing. But, it's one of those pieces you can just play when you want to relax and feel good. And this is a nice, relaxing, feel-good performance. Now, there have been many L'Enfance du Christ since this and before this that were superb. There was the last Cluitins, that EMI one, which is a classic, and then some more recent ones. And so, they've been reviewed on classicstoday.com. You can go have a look. So this, again, I think that has it held up making A-B comparisons with all those other versions? I have to confess, I didn't do them because I'm just talking about the box. I remember enjoying the performance when it came out. I enjoyed it again when I listened to it recently. And so, it's fine. But others may have their favorites. And if you are an Enfance du Christ person, an Enfance du Christian, I guess you'd call yourself, you may be far more harsh in the comparisons than I am, whereas I'm just talking about how it fits in the context of the whole edition, the context of the box. It's certainly not a weak link. And then we have the Te Deum. This is really good. The Te Deum has not been recorded that frequently. Most recordings of it are dismal. The best one is John Nelson's on Virgin, which is far more recent than this one. But this is really good. When this came out, there were only a couple. There was the Abato, which was a very good performance, but a terrible, glary, awful DG digital recording. It just sounded like hell. So, great to have the Te Deum. My goodness, people just don't play it. It's a pity. It's just too big, really. It doesn't have the cachet of the Requiem, which is the last thing here with Keith Lewis tenor. And again, it's a piece that usually bombs dismally. We all know what the great ones are. It's Charles Munch, it's Leonard Bernstein, it's Colin Davis, very little else. Ozawa's was just awful. Most other people are just underplay it. They don't have any sense of the work's excess and panache. Because, the funny thing about the Requiem is that the big moments are really very few and far between, right? It's the Dies Irae and the Lacrimosa, basically. And then the rest of it is for smaller forces and very sensitively done. And that bit has to keep moving. You've got to get through all the quiet moments because they're very beautiful. They're wonderfully done. But when you put them in context with this massive stuff, then all of a sudden it's it's like a different work. So it's very, very hard to hold together. And Inbal holds it together nicely, and the recording helps. The sonics help. They're big, and they convey that amplitude that you just need to have. It's not my favorite Requiem either. I prefer Munch and Bernstein and the first Colin Davis. And Colin Davis, those are great. But it's very, very, very solid. So nobody getting this edition should feel that you've been shortchanged or that you're unhappy about it. If you can find it at a decent price, Brilliant has not put it at their super budgie price. But if you can find it at a decent price, you're going to get some really excellent Berlioz in a box without texts, which of course is always annoying. I wonder if they have like a thing where they put text. Nah, they didn't do that. They didn't bother with it. I just have you just get your little booklet here. Here's the little booklet. Oh, look, you've got the Latin words of the Requiem and you've got the Te Deum, and you've got the Damnation of Faust in French, and you've got let's see, Friar Lawrence. You've got Romeo and Juliet. You've got all the original texts in the original languages. No translations, but that's nice of them. I never looked at the booklet. I mean, I never cared. But if I'm talking to you, I guess I should, right? I just listen to the music and go with it. I know what they're saying. Anyway, you probably do too, or at least some of you do, and you do have the words at least, which is a plus. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me, and take care.